source for everything Dynasty Fantasy Football. With your hosts, John Bauer.
I'm looking to sell everybody price dependent.
Dan Lamagna.
Too much dysfunction in Cleveland.
And Mitch Sorensen.
Well, it's hard to compete with excellence.
Welcome back to another episode of Dynasty Theory, a proud member of the Ross Tucker Football Podcast Network. I'm your host, John Bauer. You can find me on Twitter at The Bauer Club. And of course, I'm joined by Dan Lamagna. That is at FF Coach Dan. What's going on, Dan?
Good to see you guys. You know, I got to get amped up here again, John. I was hoping for a big trade today. You know, I messages, you were preparing the show notes. I was waiting for that big whopper. And, you know, we came out with DeAndre Washington and Isaiah Ford, and I was a little disappointed. And then now I'm stressing, you know, Aaron Jones is, you know, questionable again. My Cowboys might start like Garrett Gilbert, which I do get to plug the XFL. So that makes me a little bit happy, but they're going to get laced by the Steelers. So a little stress, man.
I just said I beat both you and Mitch this week in our Dynasty Leagues, but I can't even talk crap. Honestly, it has been such a random season. I've had teams lose with 170 points. I've had teams win with 80-something. It has been so random. All the injuries, everything going on. And your Cowboys, they're going to get licked by my Pittsburgh Steelers. 7-0. Could you believe it?
I like how that changes all of a sudden, Dan. Like 3 weeks ago, it was like, I don't even know who the Steelers are.
This is the earliest challenge flag in the history of Dynasty Theory, as for 8 weeks plus the entire preseason, John has been lecturing us about his fantasy teams is more important than his real life team. And as you're saying, Mitch, you know, Steelers, now they're undefeated. They're playing my Cowboys, and he's the biggest diehard Steeler fan ever. And he pulls out the bus helmet again.
That he was trying to give away this offseason, but like no one wanted it.
All right, just for this episode, the bus helmet is staying right there. Guys, can you believe the Pittsburgh Steelers, the 2021 Super Bowl champions? Dak Prescott injured. The Detroit Lions can't win a freaking game. It's absolutely incredible. It's great. I've always been a Steelers fan. I have always said, and you guys know this, Steelers above fantasy in every situation.
Okay.
Of course, here at Dynasty Theory, I put fantasy first. We have a ton of things we want to get through tonight. And I want to thank that there were several people watching live in the group chat. I know the election is going on. And I mean, honestly, Mitch, I said we weren't going to talk about it, but I do want to say one thing. This country, I don't know if it's ever been more divided, but here at Dynasty Theory, I can safely say the three of us, we have never talked about politics, and that's how it should be within the fantasy community. I really believe that. I couldn't tell you if Mitch, Dan, if you're up, down, left, right. We are here to give you the best fantasy advice to help you win championships. I don't care if you're left, right, whatever. We are going to help you win championships. And tonight, blue, red, let's go to the red side. The San Francisco 49ers, the red. They're getting smashed with injuries, guys. Dan, Jimmy Garoppolo, high ankle sprain. He's going to miss at least 6 weeks. What are your thoughts here? How do you think they do the rest of the year, but also from a dynasty perspective with Jimmy Garoppolo, Superflex, 2 quarterback? What do you think?
You know, Mitch, I'm reading the show notes here, and I think it says kick Dan while he's down as his Cowboys are hurt. And like John did a deep dive on my rosters and saw all those Garoppolo Dak combos I have. This is tough, man. You know, Jimmy GQ is a guy that I was hopeful for. I would like some cheese with my wine. You know, as far as the Jimmy GQ situation there, his time in San Francisco, other than last year's Super Bowl run that ended in disappointment, has been injury plagued and in fantasy inconsistent. You know, the 49ers support and investment in him, coupled with a great offensive mind, provides some hope for the future. But I have a big buyer beware in my notes there. And, I'm scrambling the rosters to see where I have Nick Mullins and where I could get him right now, but I'm not too excited there. That offense is struggling a little bit with injuries.
Mitch, I posed a question over to you earlier today because I know that I have Jimmy Garoppolo. I have 17 shares of Jimmy Garoppolo. 17. No exaggeration. I'll share the information if you want me to, but I know that you like to troll me a little bit. And can you admit to that?
A little bit, not a lot, just enough to piss you off each morning. It's about all I go for.
And trust me, that gets me. I bitch my wife constantly. Could you believe Mitch said this? She's like, I don't even know what that means. But Jimmy Garoppolo, I have 17 shares. So I pose the question to you. Do you think this injury, do you think it gives him a better chance to be their starting quarterback next year? Less of a chance, or it doesn't matter? Even keel.
Start off real quick. We have a brand new puppy we picked up yesterday. So if you hear squealing in the background, it's because I don't even know what's going on upstairs. The kids, they're really happy right now.
I think you have to share a picture of that dog because that is one of the cutest dogs I have ever seen in my life.
She is pretty cute, without a doubt. But so this is kind of with Garoppolo going into next year. He's the exact same. And the reason why I say this is because there's at least 9 teams that I see who need or will be looking for a quarterback next year. We have Chicago, New England, Denver is probably an iffy. Indianapolis, Jacksonville, Washington, New Orleans, and the Jets. All of those teams
I think that's fair.
Could be looking for one the same way the 49ers could. Are there any quarterbacks on those rosters that the 49ers would rather have? Because they're going to play themselves out of a draft pick. So then you have to look, okay, if they get rid of Garoppolo, who will they bring in over him? I mean, as we've seen in the chat, maybe Sam Darnold, but that I can't tell you right now Sam Darnold is better than Garoppolo, and Garoppolo's had 3 years in the system. And so how I look at it is, there's so many teams that we all say, oh, they need to get a new quarterback. There's not enough good quarterbacks out there to fill all these positions next season.
One thing I want to look at, and we talked about this with Saquon Barkley when he got injured, and then Dak Prescott when he got injured, and then we're going to talk about it with George Kittle here in a minute. But I look at Jimmy Garoppolo, and I look at the rosters that I have him on. I have 17 shares of Jimmy Garoppolo. You can't move him. Actually, correction. I have 16 shares. I moved him in one league where I packaged him with George Kittle for Matthew Stafford and Keenan Allen, and I have Darren Waller on that roster. So I felt okay with that. But so I have 16 shares, but prior to that move, 4 of my teams were 5-3. 5 were 4-4. 5 were 3-5. Then I had 2-6, 1-7, 0-8. There were only 4 out of 17 teams that had a winning record. So the Jimmy Garoppolo injury, when we look at it compared to the other injuries throughout the NFL and the way it changes the landscape, the Jimmy Garoppolo injury, it really doesn't change anything. For the most part, it doesn't. And if you're a team that is, the bottom of the standings, maybe you have a position player that's aging, or you could package it together for Jimmy Garoppolo. Sure, no harm, no foul. But Jimmy Garoppolo, he's not a player that's really going to get moved too often. I don't know. Mitch, Dan, I don't know if you guys have a lot of shares. What have you seen at this point? And the way that your rosters are made up, are you moving him, acquiring him? Or you just don't give a shit?
I think we're a little bit stuck right now. And I think, me personally, I missed a couple windows to move them. I was a little wishy-washy at certain points early in the season when it was like, you know what, Jimmy G and the Niners are Teddy Bridgewater in Carolina. And there's one that I think I could have probably got more Bridgewater shares early, and I kind of like the direction of the Carolina offense. Now it's harder. He's dead weight for a year. You're really going to have to find some fringe quarterback that might have better upside. And, to Mitch's point, I don't know if the Niners have a better option next year. So it might be better waiting now. It is a good organization. They are going to put good talent around them, let them get healthy again. And then I think the next buy window that is out there, I think I would hop on it. we know they were looking at Brady last offseason, and they decided to pass up. That was one rumor that we heard kind of swirling pretty strong. He has 2 years left on his contract. I think it's like $20-some million a year that they still have to pay him. So that could factor in there as well.
Mitch, what are your thoughts here on the contract? Because you were very blunt in our DM earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I think they owe him $26 million pretty much over the next 2 years. Each year they owe him $26 million. Dead cap is hardly anything. But who are they going to bring in that if it's a quarterback that is better than Jimmy Garoppolo, he's not going to cost less than $26 million. I mean, 30 is probably the going rate for an average starter now, getting up to 35 for a good starter. Unless they make some huge trade for a Matthew Stafford or Matt Ryan, I just don't see him moving anywhere, especially with their cap situation, because they don't have a great cap situation right now.
Can I say, and we're getting sidetracked here, but things are kind of crazy here. It doesn't matter. Let's just call a spade a spade. We have the best viewers, fans, bar none. We have Owen in the chat every freaking Tuesday night. He is in Ireland. It is 2 a.m. there. And he's telling his buddies tuned in last week. Dan, you and I, we jumped on early last week. Owen told his friends tuned in, and it was still like midnight there. That is commitment. That is what the Dynasty Theory team and family brings you on a weekly basis. So, Owen, I want to say thank you. But because, Owen, you're always here, and your friend Jeff, I know you're in the same league together, but we are going to give him advice right now. And Dan, you might remember him from last week. But Jeff says, I know I asked this week, and you guys, Owen, can I ask you in Ireland, do you guys do YE a lot? Ye? Like, ye guys had a show. I've never seen that before. But Jeff Corrigan at Jeffrey Corrigan on Twitter is dropping the ye constantly. But guys, he says he has Mahomes and Tua in a Superflex Dynasty League. He has a pick that is going to be 101 next year. Would ye guys, the YE again, would you go with the can't miss quarterback Lawrence, or would you go running back? He also has Dobbins, Swift, Gibson. What do you guys think? I would go Lawrence. If you can't trade back, go with the absolute stud.
Yeah, I think Lawrence is special. He's been the guy I've been high on. I'm waiting for. I think when we think of the number one pick, I even saved one pick in a draft. I do have one draft pick on a team that's going to be 101, and I am saving it just to make sure I have at least one Trevor Lawrence share next year. Looking at quarterbacks now this year, we talk about who has that it factor, who's special. Burrow's showing it, Herbert showing it. They've really showed some pizzazz there. We were talking about Tua last week. Little underwhelming last weekend. I'm hoping maybe the Jets fix everything, a softer schedule, softer games coming up. We'll see what he has, but I don't think you could pass on someone that special.
All right, so I'll have a tweet coming out later this week about
Mitch is going to drop some fire.
Next year's first-round picks, but Trevor Lawrence, without a shadow of a doubt, 101, because the fact is the guys behind him, I would rather have most of the 2019 guys, the 2020 guys, more than the 21 guys. Because you look at it, CEH is better than Najee Harris, in my opinion. You have Jonathan Taylor, better than ETN. You have Tua, better than Fields. And you could just go down the list. You have Lamb, that's better than Chase. I mean, people can argue about it all you want, but we've seen these guys on the field. They're very good. That's not bringing up Dobbins and Swift and all those guys. So it's definitely save the 101, get the best player that's going to be in next year's draft, and the main one I want on my teams. Because the other guys, I could replace them with guys that are already in the NFL and I've already seen them play.
Now, I think the other option is trading one of the quarterbacks for a king's ransom, or trading the 101 for, like, if you can get, as people say, I hate when people say a Godfather offer. I hate it because it references you come
offer
to me,
you can't refuse.
You come to me on the day of my daughter's wedding, you offer me all this for the 101. That is my That is my Godfather impression. And Owen says the bastard. Jeff has the 101. Owen, I hope this guy's not your friend because, man, I think you would stab him in the back if you had the chance. But, yeah, I think Trevor Lawrence, he is the 101, without a doubt.
He's a top 8 quarterback coming out next year without playing a game of Dynasty.
All right, before we move on to, without a question, the biggest injury, especially in tight end premium leagues, Dan, Nick Mullins, the way we talked about Andy Dalton and other quarterbacks that have taken over in the past due to injury, where do you have him value-wise? If you're a contender, are you going to look for him? Let's say you had Dak. And you had Dalton, and now they're out. Do you pay for Nick Mullins? Do you go elsewhere? If you're not contending, what are you moving him for?
That's a loaded question, my friend. And, as far as long-term prognosis, I am not high on Nick Mullins by any means. I look at him as a rental car, a handcuff status / rental car for 2020. If I had Dak or if, again, I'm in a need of a quarterback coming up this week. Oh, man. If I needed to contend, it's the difference in winning and losing. I'd give as high as a second-round draft pick. I hate to do it. It still pains me a little bit.
I'm there too.
But out of necessity, I might try to move some lower-end semi-prospect and, maybe a later draft pick if I can, if I have it on my roster, try to get creative. But second round's kind of where I'm at, if in need.
For me personally, and Mitch will bounce it over to you, but just because the way that my rosters are, and I'm trying to think of the rostership that I have, I might move, if possible, a Joshua Kelly in a third for Nick Mullins. If I need a quarterback, and God knows, the Bauer Club, we contend. We always contend. Mitch, what are you thinking here?
See, the problem is I could say out of all of my Dynasty leagues, there's maybe one that I need a Nick Mullins in. And
wait, can I call a timeout?
What? Yep.
I will say, out of all three of us, me, Dan, and Mitch, and oh God, Dan, I hate to do it. I hate to boost the egos of you two at all, but I'm going through a lot of my teams and rosters, and I have a really fancy spreadsheet. I think I showed it last week. Mitch, I showed you the spreadsheet, and it shows my quarterbacks in every single league. And truth be told, I'm in 69 leagues, Dynasty leagues, and that's a coincidence. So JB 69. No, it's a coincidence. Nice. No, genuinely, it is a coincidence because by next year I'll be in probably 169. But a lot of my teams, I have two really reliable quarterbacks, and I've been lucky up at this point because most of them, Josh Allen, Jared Goff, Matthew Stafford, Matt Ryan, but I can safely say he is not just talking out of his behind. Mitch came into the season in many of his leagues with 3 high-end quarterbacks or 4, and one injury is not crippling him. So I can say in most situations, Mitch is not reaching for a Nick Mullins. Oh my God, that pained me to pay you a compliment. But Mitch, let's say that you are needing a Nick Mullins. What are your thoughts here?
If I'm in need, the problem is that offense, it's still such a running offense that even if Nick Mullins is good, say he's slightly better than Jimmy Garoppolo, he's giving you 12 to 13 to 14 points a week. Without Kittle, it's probably less than that. And so he just gives you such a low upside, especially in Superflex leagues. I would rather start one quarterback and not start him in my Superflex position and start a positional player over him. So if I had to give a second, I would have to be a really good contender. I would have to be 210, 211 for me to want to give that up for him.
And for a fact that you're getting 6 regular season weeks. That. Garoppolo's not coming back. It is Nick Mullins' position to lose, if you will. But yeah, I think that if you put yourself in a situation, you shouldn't need to acquire a player like Nick Mullins.
I think you got to look at your schedule too. And again, to Mitch's credit, he pounded 3 quarterbacks and having that depth this season. I think we all have rosters that are fortunate enough that followed Mitch's philosophy there. But I think we've also had some hard luck. Mitch, before the show, you said you have one lineup, really good team, and between bye weeks and injuries, even your mustache man's hurt, your quarterback list. So I think if those injuries are going to sustain long-term too, or if you're in the pinch like you are this week, you're more likely to give up that second. You look at the 49ers schedule, and to your point, Mitch, the ceiling is low. We know how they run the offense. But again, if you have one quarterback, what if he gets hurt? If you want to start 2 quarterbacks, you get to weeks 14, 15, 16, you have a really good contender. He's going to play the Washington football team week 14. That could be nice. He plays the Cowboys week 15. To my painful heart, and per your reaction, we know that is gold. And then the Cardinals probably in a shootout in the championship game versus Kyler Murray week 16. So there's some upside there, just if you're looking ahead.
Mitch, can you tell that the DFS guy is coming out here? He's already looking ahead at the weekly matchups. I'm like, all right, what can I do in 2024? And Dan's sitting here, all right, week 16 at 3:30 p.m., this is my lineup.
Well, if I'm going to trade some draft capital, I need to know I'm not like starting him versus the Baltimore Ravens or the doomsday defense in week 16 in those critical weeks.
All right, Steven says, before we jump along to George Kittle, the Greek god George Kittle, Steven says, should I give up a 2021 second for Drew Brees and a 4th rounder? Guys, he's all in. He has Brady, Keenan Allen, but he also has Minshew, Darnold. Makes him a little depressed. If I'm contending, yes, I will pay that.
Same.
As you will often hear on Dynasty Theory, value doesn't win you championships.
That's right.
We will win you championships. I think that's our new tagline. I think we just found it right there. All right, guys. George Kittle. He is out 8 weeks with a broken bone in his foot. Mitch, you had him in, I don't know what percent of your dynasty leagues. I had him in 9 dynasty leagues. I had 9 shares. I moved him a few times today. But Mitch, what are your thoughts?
I had him on 23% of my rosters. It's a fair amount for a really high tight end. So here's kind of my issue with George Kittle is how the 49ers use him and the style of play and how he likes to play. There's him and Kelsey in the top tier. There's no one close to them right now. But the problem is Kittle, with this style of play, it's the most injury-prone position in football is the tight end. And how he plays, you could just see little nagging injuries keep happening each year to where he misses a couple games each year. You know what I mean?
And when's the last time Travis Kelce missed a game? 1937?
Yeah, it's been like 5 or 6 years. But the problem with Kelce is he's 31 or 32 now. And so that age you would think is going to catch up at some point. But how the Chiefs use him, it might not, because they don't ask him to be in line and block and then go hit a route.
Rarely.
Yeah, they do an amazing job with that. And so I'm actually I've traded a fair amount of Kittle, and he is my favorite player in the NFL. But the fact is, I don't know if I could count on him to be on my dynasty teams and carry me to championships. And that's what we want, is championships. And so if I have to trade him, get 90% of his value to do it, and get some pieces, I think that's something that we have to do.
Dan, I don't know how much you can really contribute to this. Just for the sheer fact, I know Mitch and we have a lot of George Kittle. So going over to you, what are your thoughts here? Because Mitch is willing to take a 10% hit basically on his value for a contender. And if you're rebuilding, you're not going to move George Kittle. So Dan, you're in a lot of tight end premium leagues with us. What do you think?
Yeah, my condolences to Mitch, John, anybody who has them, especially in premium leagues. It stinks. It adds to the 2020 year of disaster injuries. And to me, like, George Kittle is like the Dak Prescott of the tight ends for this year. Dak was my favorite player. Like Mitch says, hey, I love Kittle. There's those guys that we just love building around. They're young, they're talented, they got the offense around them, the system, it all aligns. So I took that approach with Dak, and I would take it the same way with George Kittle. Do I want to move him? Am I going to give him away? Heck no. Did I trade my favorite player, Dak Prescott, away in a few leagues? Yes, I did. And the reason I did would be the same reason I would move Kittle. Do I have a chance to win this year? And do I need to be good at that position? All right. We've talked about it in the past. Hey, you win this year, you're paying for a few years worth of dynasty in that league. So I want that opportunity, but I'm not going to do it to get, Rob Gronkowski, who's a little bit older and is only going to give me a few years. I'm not going to do it for Eric Ebron, who's, a good player to have with the Steelers this year. I'm going to have to get one of those guys in the top tier to make it worth it. And that's not going to be easy to do, but depending on in your league, where that other team is in the standings, they love Kittle. They're willing to give you maybe a Kelsey, a Darren Waller, a Mark Andrews. I'm listening. I'm all ears. I'll try to find a way to negotiate a deal, give myself an elite tight end that could help me win this year, and I won't be miserable that I lost Kittle next year.
All right, guys, as we do typically, I'm going to throw out real trades that went through, not mock draft trades, not mocks in general. Mitch, you like that reference, I think. But in a 2 PPR tight end premium league, I moved George Kittle for Antonio Gibson, Robert Woods, and Logan Thomas. So I moved a first round talent in that format, 2 PPR, for 3 guys that can help me win today. I am 5-3. I'm in 4th place. It's one of the DLF championship series. You get the points. In 3 years, there's $1,000 prize pool. Again, value doesn't win you championships. Dynasty Theory does. Mitch, what do you think about that? Because I actually thought you were going to be a little bit low on that.
No, I like that one, especially because you brought up how that league setting works. When you're in that DLF championship series, if you have one bad year, your chance of winning that $1,000 after 3 years is pretty much out the window. And so if you have a guy like Kittle, you move him and you probably got 85 to 90% of his full value, which is fair because if you're competing, you win that championship this year, you could go and try to trade for him next year. It's not like you can't go and move any of these pieces for more pieces. Like I moved Saquon and Kittle in one league today just because the return I was getting was really good. And I think that's something that you have to be willing to do is if you're in leagues, especially if they have potential points in them, you don't want to be taking zeros. Like you want to move that. And the good thing is with George Kittle, a lot of people still want him on their team. So you could send out an offer. And if it's close, I had so many counters today when previously I tried to move like Saquon Barkley. I got rejections and then nothing in return.
I can safely say that in tight end premium leagues in January, February, March startups, George Kittle, his value is not going to be far removed from where it was last year. Dan, let me ask you a question. I made a trade. Surprise, surprise. 2 PPR for tight ends. I'm a contender again. Surprise, surprise. I moved Jimmy Garoppolo and George Kittle for Matthew Stafford and Keenan Allen. I also have Darren Waller.
Having Waller helps me sleep well at night if I'm making that trade there.
So I'm moving 2 pieces that will not play the rest of the regular season for Matthew Stafford and Keenan Allen.
Yeah, Stafford's solid. Keenan Allen's underrated. Top tier receiver, and you're still left with Waller. That I think that fits our definition of a win now trade. That you're still feeling good about next year, and it's a fair trade. It's good for both owners. That's a solid trade. Both of those examples you gave, JB, I think were solid win-win trades for both ball clubs.
They are both situations where if you found a trade calculator, I would have lost. And guess what? I put it into a few trade calculators prior to the offer. I lost, but I knew that it helped me now. And again, we're looking to win money, win championships. Mitch, what are you laughing at?
I think that's the 4th time in the last 10 minutes you've mentioned that. It's true, but I like it.
I like it. All right. So I have 9 shares of George Kittle coming into today. I was 6-2 in one league, 5-3 in 5 leagues, 4-4, 3-5, 2-6. I shipped him off in 3 of the leagues. I was 6-2 and then 5-3 in 2 of them. So if I'm a contender, I'm moving him. I got an offer in the one league that I'm 2-6. It was like Jason Witten and a running back. And I'm like, what? Come again? And we've talked about know your league mates and the roster construction. If it makes sense, yeah, but sometimes it doesn't. So
I'd offer one more piece of advice, and that would be buy Ross Dwelly. If you talk to any 49ers fan, they are high on this kid. They feel tight end is a position strength of their offense. And I say that from a perspective, one, he's going to start. He's going to get targets. He can't hurt your roster on the back end of it. 2, maybe before you do trade George Kittle, say you're maybe not lucky as JB, who's kicking up his feet with all this wheeling and dealing he's doing over there. Maybe I wait to see if I get Dwelly on the free agent wire if he's not taken in my league. Not panic. Keep Kittle for next year and survive with Ross Dwelly this year.
So is Jordan Reed dead?
I don't know when he's coming back, and even if he does come back, he can get hurt again. Hey, if I have Reed still on my roster, that's great, but I still want Dwelly. I want to hedge all my bets and I am owning the San Fran tight end position moving forward if I can.
I think Reed. Wait, Seth. Holy cow! Seth Gordon says, "I'm guessing Bauer has a lot of." I don't. I actually have very close to 0 Dwelly. I'm going to dwell on that for a little bit. But Jordan Reed, higher ceiling. If he's healthy, he's the guy. Mitch, any thoughts here?
Wait, I'm looking it up right now. Is Jordan Reed coming back? I thought Jordan Reed was like out.
I thought no. He's listed as injured now.
Oh, well, sweet. That's good for my roster teams because I have a lot of Jordan Reed too.
All right, guys. Do you have anything else on George Kittle? The way we're navigating and maneuvering around, if you have him, if you don't have him, contender, rebuild. And we do this a lot on the show. And I'm sure you've noticed when a big time player goes down, we talk about what we would do as a rebuild or contender, because guess what? It's always relevant. And we don't want to see people making moves all willy-nilly. If it puts you in the contender spot, sure, let's talk about it. But otherwise, we have to reevaluate. So, Mitch, Dan, any other thoughts before we move on here?
The last thing that I'll mention is you might see some people talking about trying to trade Kittle because he's the tight end 1 for a lot of people. Trying to trade Kittle for Kelsey or trying to trade Kittle for Waller. The problem is those teams are probably already competing. And so trying to trade Kittle to a competing team is never, ever going to work. There's just no reason for them to move a tight end because the tight end possession is horrible outside of like the top 6 or 7 guys. And so if you have one of those guys, you're not going to move him unless you're a rebuild team and then you get Kittle. I just don't see any contending teams trading for Kittle at this point, but that was the only thing I was going to put up.
All right, so I have a few things there, but we have a very important question. Seth says, do you want to start Trump or Biden in my flex? Listen, Seth, they are both older than Frank Gore. Get them out of your flex. You're not starting them. Anyway, that was a funny question. That was clever tonight. It was clever. So George Kittle, I saw a thread on Twitter, and it said that should the Kelsey manager, whoever has Kelsey, add to get George Kittle? I can tell you right now, I will throw it down right now. If you are in any league and you have George Kittle and you can trade him for Kelsey plus, send me a screenshot. I will Venmo you personally $100. Right? It's not going to happen. It is not going to happen. So there's a dynasty league. It's 2 PPR. I'm a contender. The Kelsey manager is not. I offered Kittle and a second for Kelsey. It's still sitting there. I don't want to say it's sitting there because the manager is not active, and because he's not active, he's in last place. It's
Mitch.
No, it's,
Mitch, we're trading Kelsey for Kittle in a league tonight. We're splitting at $50 each.
Let's do it. I like it.
We'll trade back later.
if your name is Dino MC, Uber Heblick, FF. First of all, Mitch, what is Uber Heblick? What is that?
I believe, I don't know for sure, I believe it means arrogant in German. And so if you know me, arrogant would fit pretty accurately, I think. So I don't know. It's just one of those, Google it. It came up. So kind of stuck with me for a while.
There's a few things that we're subscribed to, and I have to type in Uber Heblick, and I messaged Mitch, and I'm like, you're so fucking weird. Like, like what?
Language, JB, language. This is a family show. Come on. Jeez.
I will delete that.
Keep slipping tonight.
That is the one thing that I will edit, because otherwise it's a flawless show. You don't have to edit this. You don't have to. Anyway, so if you can trade George Kittle for Travis Kelce plus, I will personally Venmo you $100. It has to be legitimate. Don't try to Photoshop stuff or any of that. But I'll take care of it.
How many Trulies did you have tonight? That's what I want to know. So what are you drinking? Show me the beverage. Oh, no, you showed me wine before. That's what it was, right?
I believe it was bottles.
That's good stuff.
To be honest. Bottles.
He's got the homemade stuff tonight.
I had bottles. Yes, I'm feeling good. It's Tuesday night. I was on drinking and talking fantasy football with Jake and Dustin. If you're not following those guys, it was one of the best guest spots I've ever had. They were beyond gracious, extremely nice guys, knowledgeable, and I bullshit with Jake all the time. Extremely good guys. Anyway, so I do want to revisit one topic from last week. And Dan, you and I, we talked about it last week. And can I say, Mitch, cover your ears? We got rave reviews from last week's show. People loved it. Listen, I'm not saying it's because Mitch wasn't on the show. I'm not saying that.
A little bit.
I'm not saying that. But we talked about how often do we adjust our rankings or tiers. And Mitch, you're the tier guy. Every time you're around, we shed a few tears. So tell us about it. God, I'm on a roll tonight. Holy cow. Holy cow.
Our poor listeners, man.
All right, Mitch. So how often are you adjusting your rankings or tiers? Because Dan and I, we said basically like once a week.
Yeah, so I have a whole tier list that goes like 40 deep on quarterbacks, 75 deep on wide receivers, all broken up in tiers with the updated points. And I was pretty lazy over the last 3 weeks, and I didn't update it. I had to spend 8 hours to update it this past week before this last weekend's games. Like, it was a horrible idea. And I'm not a rapid react guy. I'm not like, hey, someone had a good week, I got to bump him up. It's just injuries have happened so much this year. I've started adding in the 21 rookies into them. And there's just so much small movements here and there. But the big reason why I do it is someone hits you with a trade. They're like, hey, Miles Sanders and Julio Jones for Josh Jacobs and Amari Cooper. I'm like, okay, I could go look at their schedule, see how it goes. But if I have the running backs in the same tier, the wide receivers in the same tier, there's no reason for me to do the trade in the first place.
Mitch, real quick. Can I say somebody shot me a message earlier and said, would you trade Miles Sanders for Josh Jacobs? I didn't tell you that. It's just so funny that you brought those guys up.
Yeah, there's no reason to. I mean, unless you're just looking at the next 5 weeks in fantasy, somehow one of them has a better schedule than the other one. Going into next year, there's going to be very little difference between the two. It's going to be personal preference. And so there's no big reason to make that trade unless you just see this guy has a slam schedule for the next 5 weeks and the other guy doesn't.
So Dan and I, we talked about weekly, but I do want to, there's a reason I wanted to bring it up, because you look at, let's talk about wide receivers and the lack of consistency. And I feel like this year more than ever, There's been so much more variance week to week. And there are people that are doing incredible things with consistency. Mitch, when we were Super Flexology, we had Bob Lung on the show, and he has the consistency guide manual. Like it is the Bible of consistency. But this year, look at just 1 week difference. DJ Moore, Tyler Lockett, Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson, Amari Cooper. One bad or good game is going to swing you one way or the other. I mean, we had CeeDee Lamb as the wide receiver one. I say we, the fantasy community, but now where is he? Probably wide receiver 5, 6, 7. It changes so quickly. So I think we need to be very cautious about how quickly we change guys, because especially this year, the variance, the weekly consistency, it is going to change so rapidly. Dan, do you have any adjustments here from what we said last week?
I think I'm going to have Mitch travel from Utah to Pennsylvania and just do my rankings for me here because, mine are in my head, man. So I give you kudos there for the 8-hour project. And I know they do take a lot of time. We've all spent a ton of time on our rankings in the off season. I think it's important to understand the difference between weekly matchups and offensive game plans versus just poor production or decline. I try to project the direction of the organization next year. If we're talking like true dynasty rankings, where we're looking at them going into next year, I think Michael Gallup's going to be fine. I think, Dak comes back, they fix the O-line, he's going to be a good receiver, where T.Y. Hilton may not be. He's officially dead to me after last week. You're talking to DFS Dan instead of Coach Dan right now. I'm looking at those weekly matchups and knowing, hey, when is Amari Cooper, not going to hit his ceiling, but hey, he's still a good wide receiver. He's going to be fine versus this guy we're really starting to, someone we're starting to question. So I think it's really important to know that week to week versus just, dropping them off the rankings cliff because you're mad and they didn't produce and then you trade them and you're regretting it later on.
One guy that we're going to talk about on Fantasy Football Confidential tomorrow night at 9:00, Dante Wallette. I hope I pronounced that correctly. He says, what are your thoughts on Corey Davis? Hold or sell in Dynasty? Corey Davis has to be seen as one of the top 4 breakout candidates here in 2020, right? I mean, he did nothing his first 3 seasons. And now Corey Davis, he's up there with A.J. Brown. His points per game, it's like 16 PPR points per game. It's all very circumstantial. If I'm contending, Corey Davis, give me the points. Give me the points.
I'm so depressed. This goes back to John's pre-show notes of kick Dan while he's down, because I like just Corey Davis truther harping him, so many shares, trading for him. Tyreek Hill went through that disaster. I think we had some trade with Corey Davis, Mitch, when I was at the gym one time. And I sold. And, I still have, unfortunately, shares of like Sammy Watkins on my roster, but no Corey Davis shares. But he is looking good. And he's the way that offense is this year, he's going to continue to get targets. And I think in weeks where maybe A.J. Brown especially has a tough matchup, you're going to see some nice games from Corey Davis.
A.J. Brown is so good. He demands so much focus. But guess what? Corey Davis, he has been good this whole time. I don't know what was. But Corey Davis has been really good. Maybe it's Ryan Tannehill just like something clicking. But what are your thoughts, Mitch?
Let me just add one more thing there before you go, Mitch, if I can. And it frustrates me because I had this vision going into the year that this Tennessee offense was going to take that next jump. Check, correct. Tannehill could be a little bit sneaky. He's looking good, like you said. But I have this.
Dan, I'm sorry, but we own our misses. I own my miss. I said this offense was going to be crap. I said that on Dynasty Theory. So I own that miss. I own it.
But the vision, I'm happy that I was right on the spike, but I had this offense is going strictly through Henry, Brown, and Jonnu. And instead, it's Corey Davis instead of Jonnu because Jonnu's just not getting the volume. He had some good games early. I'm hoping maybe he's still just a little hobbled from that injury and he has some good games ahead. But Davis is getting much more target share than I anticipated.
Johnny's still top 10 tight end though.
That's from early production in the season. It hasn't been paying off in quite some time here. So, and DFS Dan's still a little salty again from last week because I was hoping this was the week that Jono came through, and instead I didn't have enough cojones to say, hey, Corey Davis, and I had him in a lineup or two, and I took him out. So,
right. All right, Mitch, so back to the tiers and the rankings, do you think that we should be more cautious about adjusting rankings or tiers on one or two good games? Because we've seen the fluctuations, they are wild.
The problem is when we adjust the tiers off the stats. When we adjust them off the box scores, that's an issue. Take someone like DK Metcalf, right? You watch DK Metcalf play, and each week you're like, okay, he needs to move up the rankings. And it's not because he's catching a 40-yard bomb. It's because you're watching him, and he's taking a 10-yard pass and running 50 yards doing stuff that, during the draft process, we never thought he'd be able to do. And then you look at someone like Justin Jefferson, who everyone bumped into that top 5, right? Jefferson looks awesome, but I don't think we see that kind of DK Metcalf upside from him. We don't see DeAndre Hopkins from him. We see him in great matchups. He's able to do really well. And that's good. That's what a lot of wide receivers do. But I try to only move up guys when I see the talent is actually doing it and not based off, like Dan said, good game script. Maybe the quarterback was injured, and so he just did really well there. But I try to do it more based off talent than just being like, oh, look, this guy got 120 yards last week. Let's bump him up to the next tier.
Thank you, Mitch. I want to say thank you.
You're welcome.
Because every week I look for the perfect clip, and the clip that I'm going to put on Twitter, and that is it right there. That's it. It was perfect. It was flawless.
That was an alley-oop.
Yeah, it was set up for me. I appreciate it.
It was very good. Last thing I want to talk about, because believe it or not, I'm guilty. For once, I made a fantasy mistake. I did it. I want to talk about patience as a contender, because there was one league where I packaged up, and oh my God, did I package up. It was J.K. Dobbins, T. Higgins, who I love. I love T. Higgins. And what I thought was going to be a late 2021 first.
See where this is going.
Yep.
For Jonathan Taylor. This was over a month ago, and I thought it was, Dan, you talk about an alley-oop. I thought it was an alley-oop. And guess what? There were many that would rather have J.K. Dobbins straight up today over Jonathan Taylor. So T. Higgins, the first, that is gravy. I'm not joking. I actually have sat there and I've thought of this trade. I live, breathe, and die fantasy football, just like you, Mitch, just like you, Dan. But I've thought about this trade so many times, it eats away at me. My wife's like, hey, hon, do you want to get pizza tonight? I say, no. This trade is my meal tonight. That's what I say. But Dan, what are your thoughts here on patience as a contender? Because you're rebuilding. Yeah, you can be a little patient, but you're a contender. You want to pounce. You want to make those moves. You want to get those points. What are your thoughts on this?
Man, you give me like again, kick Dan while he's down. Here he is. I'm having like post-traumatic here, like flashbacks of me going for the title and saying Kamara's been terrible for all these weeks. I'm going to get red hot Chris Carson off John, and he'll still be good next year. And Mark Ingram with that Ravens offense that looked incredible last year. And
that's actually a perfect example from last year.
That is the exact feeling that you are describing to me now, that there's not a week that goes by that I don't think about that trade and say, why was I not more patient? And I have little glimmers of Chris Carson still looking good. And I'm like, I'm not feeling like horrible every week. But
can you elaborate to our listeners really quick? Just paint the picture here
of that trade from last year. Yeah. So I was cruising in the league. I really, contender, chance at a championship.
I think you were like 10-1 or 11-2 or something.
I had a very good record, and I was very impatient with Alvin Kamara. Little did I not completely know because of my impatience. And of course, the Saints aren't going to say anything because he was battling an injury, and that was a lot of the issue. So Chris Carson was hot. Mark Ingram and the Ravens offense was hot, and I'm thinking 2 running backs for a struggling one. I did the DFS, Dan, and I looked at the weeks 14, 15, 16 schedule. It looked really nice for Carson and Ingram, and it blew up in my face because the second I traded Kamara, he got hot, and this year he's still a lot younger than Ingram, who's like toast now. Carson's still good, but he can't stay healthy, and it was the impatient piece that cost me. And I think, hey, I know what you were seeing this year in Jonathan Taylor. The hype was there. We're seeing that great Colts offensive line, and the expectations were high, and you bid on it, man. And probably, impatient too. T. Higgins is another one. He wasn't really that enticing early in the year, but what you saw in him potentially going into the year is starting to come into fruition right now. So that I'm sure makes it even more painful for you. And now if you talk about that number 1 draft pick also, now it's looking like it could be more attractive for that team. Yeah, I keep drinking that wine.
Mitch, what are your thoughts here? Because, again, I don't want to say it, but I'm going to say it. There are plenty of dynasty shows and dynasty analysts. We're not analysts. We are people that give advice that could help you win money. That's the way I see it. But there are plenty of people out there that would never bring up their misses. But here at Dynasty Theory, we have hits. Trust me, we have hits. We talk about it. We brag about it. But we talk about our misses just as much. And I think that's important to focus on because it helps you improve your process and how to improve as a dynasty player. So I got impatient there, Mitch. What are your overall thoughts on that?
The problem is you look at it as a contender, right? But
Mitch is just going to throw up, right? He's like, "Bah."
I know it's hard because we look at, like, I traded Kittle in 3 leagues today, right? Kittle, in my mind, is the tight end 1, if not the tight end 2, at worst in Dynasty. I could look at these trades in 6 months and be like, what in the hell was I doing? But at the same time, I'm in contention in all of those leagues. All of those leagues, I have a chance to win a championship and win money. So if I have to take the chance today to win, I'm willing to do it. I'm not going to do it on a 2-5 team and go and trade Kittle for no reason. But sometimes you have to make those chances because all the ones that we don't hit on, we just have to hit on more than we miss on. Just like I picked up a lot of Antonio Brown shares in 2019. Dan knows, Dan gave me crap for it for a long time. Those didn't pan out at all. At the same time, I picked up a ton of Tyreek Hill shares at the same time. Those worked out perfectly. And so
guilty off of me.
Off of you.
Off of me.
I think I got it for like a late 3rd or a 2nd. Yeah, whatever it was. But that's what you have to do. You have to take shots. And it's not going to win. You're not going to be able to put it on any calculator and win on a lot of these. But sometimes you just have to go with your gut feeling. And when you're right, that's how you win the money. Because the fact is, if you build your team strictly off value, you go, this is the perfect pick. This is the perfect pick. We can't trade this because it's not the perfect trade. You're going to be an average team because that's what everybody else is doing. You need to step up and be able to make hopefully educated guesses and win some trades that way, even though on the calculators and Twitter, you won't win the trade through the polls or the value charts.
As we always say, value, not necessarily championships or money, but there are so many smart people. Like there were so many smart people and podcasts and dynasty references on Twitter, but they only mention their hits. Mitch, how often, Dan, in your defense, you're not as crazy on Twitter as Mitch and I are. And you'll admit to that. Like, you're maybe a little more involved at your job, but Mitch and I, we are always, Mitch and I, we are always on Twitter. And if we have a miss, we talk about it. We make a joke about it. Because guess what? We all have misses. So if you listen to a Dynasty podcast, if you have resources, if you follow people on Twitter and they only talk about their hits, they are leading you astray. I am telling you that right now. They are leading you astray because Mitch, Dan, and myself, we could talk about the hits all day long. How long do you have? A couple of days? Because that's how long it's going to take. But we will tell you about the misses because that is just as important to talk about the misses and the process and how to correct it. It really is. Like, I mean, Dan,
You're getting me pumped.
Dan, how big was the check that you cut out of Dynasty Theory last month? A couple million? No, nothing. Mitch, how big was your check? Nothing.
I'm in the negative.
we are here on a weekly freaking basis to give you the best advice that we can to win you money. Because guess what? The three of us, we're winning money, but it's not because of subscribers or downloads or anything. Like, we are doing this for the fun of the game and because we enjoy giving you winning advice. I can't say that enough. And Dan, you know what's coming.
Final thoughts.
What do you have for our listeners heading into week 9?
You've got me all kinds of jacked up right now, ready to make some trades. Like, I'm feeling that energy coming through the microphone.
Should we do a 3-hour show?
I'm going to start looking at
should we do a 3-hour show?
Yeah, I know you can. Mitch and I are like looking at, our wives are calling JB, but man, for closing thoughts, I'm ready to watch some film, look at what roles these running backs are going to have around Jonathan Taylor next year and see what the beat reporters are saying and make some educated decisions. You really got to look at it all. But final thoughts, it is make it or break it week coming up here, I believe. We talked in weeks past about being patient and all that. Right here tonight, Coach Dan, I'm looking at some rosters. I've had some DAC adversity. I've got some real strong contenders, and I think I might have a few pretenders. After this week, it is either contender or rebuild time. I'm declaring it now. I might be throwing up the white flag here or there and making some more decisions, not hasty ones, but some more educated decisions coming up. So let's take some hard look at the rosters and some upcoming episodes of Dynasty Theory.
Mitch, what do you have?
I'm just going to say do what Dan said because he did perfect there and I can't beat it. So, yeah, do whatever Dan says.
Thanks, Mitch.
I rarely give a final thought, but again, if you listen to anybody, make sure they count their hits, they count their misses, they give you advice, they lead you in the right direction. There are people they count on giving advice to get a proceed. Dan, Mitch, and myself, we count on giving advice for the sheer satisfaction of making sure you win your fucking league. That's it. I want you to win money. That is it. Dan, I'll cut the effing out. Don't worry. But listen, we want you to win your league. We want you to win money. That is all that matters to us. And as always, Dan, hand over the face. We want to thank everybody for tuning in. Make sure you follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at Dynasty Theory FF. Stay safe. Be kind to each other. Unless you're Dan, get a little rude. And where are we here? Have a good night.
That's John's election speech for next year here. He's running for president.